Labor's climate bill is tipped to clear the Senate this week with the support of key crossbenchers who are pushing for some amendments. We just heard from independent Senator David Pocock earlier today about the legislation.
We've settled on some amendments that I think will actually strengthen the bill. From the start, I've said we need to legislate a target, but that target needs to have integrity. Minister Bowen's going to talk later on today about the specifics of them.
And the Energy and Climate Minister Chris Bowen is with me now live in the studio. Thanks for your time. So the crossbench has been calling for amendments. My understanding is David Pocock saying he got 4 out of 7 of his concessions. Is that accurate, and what are they?
Well, there's been good discussions with Senator Pocock, and I thank him for them. Just as in the House of Representatives, we said we would act constructively with the crossbench and accept good ideas in keeping with our agenda. The same with David, the same with Senator Pocock. So he's suggesting things like a little bit more particularity about what's in my annual report to Parliament about climate risks. That would be my intention anyway, so we're more than happy to incorporate that into the bill. Some tighter rules about climate change authority advice and when it should be tabled, etc. Again, what we would intend to do, but happy to enshrine it in legislation going forward, and those sorts of things. So he's had a range of constructive suggestions. We don't agree about everything. There'll be a couple of things that he moves that we won't support, but we are more than happy to support his very constructive suggestions.
So in terms of, let's go through what you won't support. The EPBC change essentially means no new coal or gas.
Well, obviously we have a very clear position on those things about proper processes, reform of EPBC and a new EPA.
That's happening as a review, but
correct.
His sort of strong line, make it all but impossible for new coal or gas.
Well, again, we have our own position of reform of the EPBC Act as the government, and Minister Pocock will be working that through.
Okay.
So we won't be supporting any amendments of that nature.
And what else are you not supporting of his?
Well, it depends what he moves, really. But what I have agreed with David is what we will support, those sensible amendments that he would move relating to climate change authority advice, relating to statements of risk in my statement to Parliament, those sorts of things. There's a number of them. But very happy to support them. If he moves them, we will support them. Then, of course, how other parties vote is up to them.
And anything else we should know about? There was the native forest wood waste, whether or not that should be defined as renewable energy. So burning this, it's renewable technically. It's not traditional renewable that we think of, perhaps.
Yeah, this has been an issue which has come up. It was raised in the House of Representatives by the Greens as well, and it's been raised by Senator Pocock. I think there are legitimate issues to be concerned about here. But what I don't want to do is have an ad hoc decision. The way we do business in the Albanese government is to do things carefully and with consultation. So I'll be releasing a short consultation paper about this. To be fair, the forest industry by and large looks for higher value return elsewhere than burning it for energy. But I do think there are legitimate issues about the carbon impacts. So I want to have a discussion paper, a brief process, let people have their say, and then I will make a decision after that.
So presumably that would mean it's not going to be part of this bill this week.
No.
So you'll say no to a change, but we'll
have a process. It was raised, the Senate inquiry into our bill recommended that the government consider it. I'm accepting that recommendation, that we consider these options. But as I said, the way we do business is we work the issues through carefully. I want people to have their say. There are some complicating factors. There are some technical matters which need to be worked through. And the best way of doing that is a sensible, calm consultation process.
Anything else significant we need to know about in terms of these changes?
What we need to know, Tom, is that Australia will have a Climate Change Act for the first time in more than a decade, and that's a very good thing for our country because it sends a signal to investors around the world and in Australia. There's one climate law, it's the Climate Change Act, it's enshrined in legislation, the government's getting on with the job, and we're open for business for investments in renewable energy, in transmission and storage. The
Climate Change Authority, and one of the changes, David Pocock said, let's have transparency and around the advice they give. So are they going to be free to give advice whether we should go harder on reducing emissions, for example, and what would that decision be based on?
Oh, they're free to give any advice to the Climate Change Authority. That's their job, they're independent, right? Now, they will have to have regard to our commitments under the Paris Accord, for example, in the original bill. That's not an amendment.
That's more the floor.
Correct.
I'm talking about if they want to give advice that says, we think you need to go to 55%.
Well, they'll be next asked to advise on our future targets, so 2035, etc. The 2030 target the government has announced and locked in.
They won't be looking at the 2030 target.
No, they'll be advising the government on a few things. They'll be advising government about our climate change statement to Parliament, how we're going, what we need to do to achieve those targets. They'll then be advising us on future targets, future matters, going forward, and as is appropriate. The Climate Change Authority, I want to put the authority back into it, give them real independence to do their job. The bill requires quite a bit of transparency about that process. There's been some amendments moved in the House and now in the Senate to improve that. More than happy to embrace that. It's been a very good process.
So when they're coming up with 2035, though, are they just saying, what does the world need to do to keep it to, say, 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees?
Well, they have to have regard to our commitments under Paris, yes. Yes, they have to have regard to that. That is the whole thing.
How do they factor that in? Australia is a small part of emissions.
Well, what they factor in is our circumstances, our economy, our ability. They factor all the economic implications, not just cost, Tom, benefits as well. Sure. They factor all that in. Ultimately, of course, to be very clear, the government makes decisions and the cabinet will...
They'll do it, it'll be public.
Correct.
They'll say, here's why it should be 65%.
I'm not going to start naming numbers, but they're going to make recommendations to government. I'll make recommendations to cabinet. Cabinet will consider the matter. It'll all be transparent. We'll be releasing, their advice, what our decision is, etc., etc. A much better process than we've had over the last 10 years of Scott Morrison, going off to Glasgow with a pamphlet. Didn't even bother to check with the Climate Change Authority, but he took his pamphlet to the last COP. We will be having best practice governance in relation to the process for setting future targets. One
of your pre-election commitments and a policy document that's actually still online now today was, and this is a direct quote, Labor will cut power bills by $275 a year by 2025 compared to today. Is that still going to happen? Yeah,
we are totally committed to getting more renewable energy into the system to reduce power prices because unlike the Liberal Party which thinks nuclear is the answer, that's the most expensive form of energy, we know, the science tells us, renewable energy is the answer. It is the cheapest form of energy. This is even more important given what we now know, that Angus Taylor lied to the Australian people, changed the law, signed a regulation to hide a 19% increase in power prices pre-election. Just shameful conduct, a scandal. That makes the fact that we inherited this mess even more important, that we get to 82% renewables. We stand by the modelling that we released pre-election, which informed that statement, 275 by 2025. We stand by that. We stand by our commitment.
Just on that then, so what does that now mean? Are you saying that the latest power prices that were released, which were a hell of a lot higher than pre-election, that's your benchmark?
Well, no, I'm saying it's even more...
Will be
I'm saying
$75
lower. I'm saying it's even more important to get more renewables into the system, given the mess we've inherited, given the dishonesty of Angus Taylor, who's not fit to be a PNC treasurer, let alone Treasurer of Australia. I probably should apologise to PNC treasurers for equating them with Angus Taylor, because it's frankly a scandal what he did. He lied to the Australian people pre-election. He's not fit to hold office. But it makes his negligence, I mean, it's a result of 10 years of negligence. We had 4 gigawatts of power come out of the system, 1 gigawatt come on. That leads to the energy crisis we recently had, and it leads to higher power prices. So it's more important than ever. We get more renewables into the system, more transmission and more storage. It's good for the environment and it's good for power bills as well.
But just what this power bill promise is now, you say you stand by the modelling.
Stand by the modelling.
That was a reduction. If you look at what Reputex pulled out there, I mean, there's not a lot of detail and methodology. What they say is, here's the reduction in wholesale and
I'll tell you this. By 2025, I mean, the government, the former government, the Liberal Party, saying, "Oh, where's the power price reduction?" They don't mention the 2025 bit because, of course, we have to have a chance.
Yeah,
you are. I'm respecting your position. I'm not respecting the Liberal Party's approach. They never mention that part. People will judge us on performance. What I won't do is change the law and sign regulations to try and hide power price increases before an election. That's Angus Taylor's shtick, not mine.
The 275, they'll be down by in 2025. What's the benchmark?
Well, as was the election commitment, as was the modelling based. I accept that power price has gone up. Angus Taylor lied about it. I accept that, but we stand by the original
So your benchmark
modelling.
is still the pre-election price.
Look, we're standing by the modelling, Tom.
No, but I'm just trying to ask.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting
that quote says compared to today.
I'm just pointing out that, of course, it's gotten harder. Yes, because of Angus Taylor's dishonesty, but the commitment is even more important.
So you'll still get there, just to clarify, because as of today...
We're standing by
the reason I ask is because, down the track, today might be, well, the true price that day when we released this was, we didn't realise Angus Taylor was hiding it, but you're still saying...
I'm standing by the modelling, Tom, and I'm saying people can judge us on our performance. and we won't be hiding the real power prices like Angus Taylor
So we
did.
can pull up the power price, the pre-election
People,
power
I'm
price.
sure you will do that, Tom. And
But that's what I'm asking. That's the benchmark.
And I'm sure people will judge us on our performance, and they will judge us on the comparison with the previous government, which hid power price rises from them before their election.
But that benchmark would be the pre-election or the post-election?
We're standing by the modelling. We're standing by them. And the modelling was done pre-election.
Okay.
I stand by the modelling,
Okay.
but I do reserve the right and will point out Angus Taylor was fundamentally dishonest, not only with us, but with all Australian voters pre-election about power prices, and it makes this task of ours even more important.
But you'll still get there.
Well, we're getting on with the job, Tom. I mean, we are going at a pace in our first 100 days, but we'll be judged ultimately not on our first 100 days, we'll be judged on performance over the term.
Okay. Paul Broad, was he sacked or did he resign?
Well, he resigned, and I thank him for his service to Snowy Hydro. He resigned, and I work closely with my fellow shareholder minister, Katie Gallagher, on dealing with a whole range of the issues that the previous government left us in relation to Snowy Hydro, including the fact that the previous government's signature commitment, Snowy 2.0, is running 18 months late. Another thing they weren't honest about pre-election.
Is it $2.2 billion over?
There's a claim against Snowy Hydro. I'm working very closely with my fellow shareholder minister, Katie Gallagher, to reduce and minimise, and with the Snowy board.
So you don't know yet the true...
And there's been a claim which hasn't been worked through.
Okay.
That's not about knowing or not knowing. It hasn't been finalised.
Okay.
There's been a claim. I am concerned about the budget for Snowy 2.0. I am. You know, I agree with that point. It is concerning, but we are not about to agree to a $2 billion claim just like that. We will work to minimise the cost blowout
that's
that we've
been put out
inherited.
there. And you, Okay. So just finally on this, was there a disagreement though between you or your government and Paul Broad over curry and the energy mix?
No, well, look,
it's going to use?
In relation to Snowy Hydro, there are a whole range of issues we're working through. The 2-year delay...
I'm just asking specifically about curry.
Yeah, and I'll get to that. The 18 months delay in Snowy 2.0, the significant issues around the budget. In relation to curry, so the Snowy Hydro business case, released pre-election, says explicitly, and it's still on the website, 30% green hydrogen is possible with minimal investment.
From day one?
That's what the Snowy Hydro business case said. Now, we are working...
Paul Broad says that can't happen. Was there disagreement because...
I didn't write the Snowy Hydro business case, but I'm not here to prosecute any arguments. We are getting on with the job, working in whatever way we can. I note that the chairman of Snowy, David Knox, has said the new government is working very constructively with him and with Snowy to get on with the job of decarbonising the grid, and that's exactly what I intend to do, and to implement the election commitments to the best of our ability going forward.
So was his leaving entirely amicable?
Oh, look, he's made public statements, he's resigned. I don't really want to do anything other than wish him the best for his future.
Minister, we appreciate your time today on a busy day.
Always a pleasure, Tom.